The snow had already started falling again when I turned off the interstate onto the narrow two-lane road leading into Wichita Falls. I had driven 11 hours straight from Portland, through sleet and freezing wind, gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping me tethered to reality. In the back seat, carefully secured under a fleece blanket, sat a pie dish still warm from this morning's oven. Grandma's apple pie, the one I'd spent weeks perfecting. In the passenger seat, 2 large tote bags packed with hand-picked gifts. I hadn't told Mom I was coming home for Christmas. I wanted it to be a surprise, but I never imagined I'd be the one surprised. What happened that night on her porch didn't feel real, not at first. But the echo of her voice stayed in my ears long after the door closed in my face. "Sorry, I think you have the wrong house. I should have known better." The signs had been there for years, hiding in plain sight like Christmas lights turned off in the daylight. Harmless until they flickered to life and revealed everything. But back then I was still just Natalie, still hoping, still believing that love and loyalty ran both ways. Our family had never been perfect. Dad left when I was 10. Said he was going on a business trip to Denver. He never came back. Mom, Linda, kept the house and picked up double shifts at the hospital. She came home exhausted, smelling like antiseptic and cafeteria coffee, and collapsed on the couch in her scrubs. I became the default adult. Laundry, dinner, homework. My little brother Dylan, for years younger, was the golden boy. All charm and chaos. Quick with a joke, quick to cry when things didn't go his way. And somehow always forgiven. Me. I was the one who made sure the lights stayed on. Even when I moved out for college, I stayed close. A marketing firm in Austin hired me after graduation, and for a few years I drove home every other weekend with groceries and laundry soap. When I got the job offer in Portland, a promotion, double the salary, I hesitated. I remember Mom's tight-lipped smile when I told her. "Well, I guess it's time," she'd said, but her eyes, they didn't match her voice. At first, I sent money just to help out. The furnace broke that winter, $3,800. Then Dylan needed a car to get to interviews, $5,000. The requests became regular, quiet, implied. By the end of that first year in Oregon, I'd set up automatic transfers, $800 every month to Mom's account to help with a mortgage, and $500 to Dylan, until he gets back on his feet. That was 5 years ago. I told myself it was love, that sending money was how I stayed connected, how I proved I still belonged, that I was a good daughter, a good sister. And for a while I believed it. Even as their lives seemed to improve, new furniture, remodeled kitchen, Dylan's endless rotation of gadgets and ski trips, I kept giving, kept calling, kept being met with missed calls, one-word texts, and silence. But this year, I wanted things to be different. I declined a company retreat in Hawaii. I took the whole week off. I found the exact shade of cashmere Mom once said she loved. Booked her a spa day at the new lakeside resort she'd always talked about. For Dylan, I tracked down a limited edition console he thought was sold out. I made the pie. I wrapped everything in silver and blue and tied each ribbon by hand. And then I drove home, across 3 states, through snow, through exhaustion, through every memory I still believed had meant something, hoping that maybe, just maybe, coming home would feel like home again. It never occurred to me that I was walking into a place where I no longer belonged. The house looked different, elegant, almost unfamiliar. White lights draped along the porch railings, a fresh wreath on the door, soft music and laughter slipping through the windows like warmth leaking into the cold. I parked at the curb and checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. My eyes were tired, my makeup smudged, but I brushed my hair, dabbed on lip gloss, and told myself it was fine. I was fine. I balanced the pie in one hand, the gift bags in the other, and walked up the freshly shoveled steps like someone approaching something sacred. This was my home, wasn't it? I rang the doorbell. A few seconds passed. Footsteps. The lock turned. Then the door opened, and there she was. My mother. Hair perfectly curled, makeup flawless, a glass of red wine in her hand, and a necklace I'd never seen before glittering at her neck. Her dress was black satin, sleek and expensive looking. She looked surprised, not happy, not touched, not anything I had imagined during those 11 hours on the road. Her eyes flicked from my snow-covered boots to the pie, then the gift bags, then back to my face. "Sorry," she said slowly, her voice loud enough for someone inside to hear. "I think you have the wrong house." I blinked. Laughed, actually. "Mom, it's me. Natalie." For half a second, something flickered in her expression. Recognition, guilt, maybe even panic, but it vanished. She shifted, positioning herself to block the view inside. "I'm afraid you must be confused. There's no Natalie here." The pie grew heavier in my hands. "We spoke earlier today. I told you I was driving in. You said you were having dinner at 6. She leaned forward slightly, lowering her voice. "This isn't a good time, Natalie. You should have called to confirm." "I did call." My voice cracked. "You knew I was coming." I said I had gifts. I wanted to surprise you." From inside, a man's voice called out, "Linda? Who's at the door? We're ready for the toast." She glanced over her shoulder, then back at me, her voice sharper now. "Like I said, you have the wrong house. Merry Christmas." She started to close the door. I stepped forward instinctively, blocking it with my foot. "Please, just take the gifts. I came all this way. At least let me do that." For a moment, I thought she might relent. Her eyes softened, barely. But then another voice came from behind her, and Dylan appeared, dressed in a button-down shirt and tie, his hair neatly styled, a glass of champagne in hand. His eyes met mine. He froze. Then his face twisted, not in anger, not in welcome, but in pure discomfort. "It's nothing," Mom said quickly, grabbing his arm. "Just someone with the wrong address." Dylan looked at me, then at her. "Everything okay out here?" "Fine," she replied. "We're going back in." I stared at my brother, the same brother who had taken $500 from me every single month for 5 years. The same brother who called me the best sister in the world whenever the money hit his account. The same brother who hadn't shown up when I was hospitalized last year for surgery. "Dylan," I whispered. But he didn't say my name. He didn't say anything at all. Inside, a woman's voice called out, "Dylan, your girlfriend's telling that story about Aspen again. Come back." Aspen. My stomach dropped. Aspen, with what money? Mom turned back to me, expression hardened now. "You need to leave, Natalie. This is embarrassing for everyone." Embarrassing. The word echoed in my throat. "I'm your daughter." She hissed, "We have important people here tonight. This isn't the time for one of your dramatic appearances." The countdown began inside. 10-9. "Just go," she said. "Please." 8-7. Dylan looked away. I didn't. I held his gaze until the very end. 6-5-4. He didn't flinch. 3-2. And then, with one final push, she closed the door. 1. Applause erupted from inside. I stood motionless on the porch, the pie still in my hand, steam curling into the cold night air, as everything I thought I still had collapsed in silence. I made it back to the car, though I don't remember walking there. The snow had picked up, swirling in tight spirals under the streetlights. My hands were shaking as I opened the door and collapsed into the driver's seat. I placed the pie dish on the passenger side, its warmth gone. The gift bags tumbled into the floorboard, one of them splitting open. A ribbon unraveled, revealing the corner of the blue cashmere sweater I'd chosen so carefully for Mom, now dusted with snow. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just sat there, watching the frost creep across the windshield, gripping the steering like I was afraid I might vanish if I let go. Then my phone rang. It was Dylan. For a moment, I stared at his name on the screen. My thumb hovered over the decline button. But something in me, Still wanted to believe this was all a misunderstanding. That once the guests left, he'd explain, Mom would apologize, and things could still be salvaged. I answered, Eli. His voice was low, like he'd stepped into a hallway. Are you still outside? I'm in my car, I said quietly. Look, I'm sorry about what just happened. I didn't know you were actually coming today. Mom told everyone you canceled. I spoke to her this morning, I said. I told her I was driving in. There was a pause. Yeah, well, she's been planning this party for weeks. You know how she is about appearances. It just caught her off guard, that's all. I didn't answer. Anyway, he continued, voice light, casual, like none of it mattered. Christmas Day is tomorrow. Maybe we can meet for coffee? Just the two of us. Exchange gifts or whatever. I stared out at the house. Through the frosted glass, shadows danced in the living room. Laughter leaked out when someone opened the door to let in another guest. Nobody noticed the pile of ruined gifts still sitting on the porch. Sure, I said flatly. Coffee. You're the best, sis, he said with a breath of relief. Always understanding. Then the call should have ended, but it didn't, because Dylan didn't hang up. Instead, I heard the rustle of movement, muffled laughter, the clink of glasses. Then his voice again, no longer soft or sorry. Crisis averted, he said, a chuckle in his throat. She's at some motel. Totally bought the coffee thing. Another voice responded, a woman's, amused and distant. I couldn't make out the words. I know, right? Dylan continued. She still thinks helping with rent means she's automatically invited to everything we do. My breath caught. It's not like she can't afford it, he said. Have you seen her apartment on Facebook? All that travel. She's doing fine without us. A different voice, one I hadn't heard in years, but still recognized down to the marrow, chimed in my mother. At least her money doesn't talk, she said dryly, followed by clinking glasses and soft laughter. I stared straight ahead, unmoving. Dylan laughed again. Remember when she missed Christmas last year because she had the flu? And she sent all those packages overnight like we were supposed to be impressed. Oh, and the pie, Mom added. She brought a literal homemade pie tonight, like this is some Hallmark movie. So pathetic. My grip on the steering wheel tightened until my knuckles turned white. She's always been like that, Mom continued. Always asking how we're feeling, wanting to talk about our day. Who has time for that? More laughter. More clinking. She just needs so much, Dylan said. It's exhausting. But hey, at least she's useful. My vision blurred. The call continued in the background. Distant voices talking about spa investments, rent payments, gifts they bought with my money, but I didn't hear the words anymore. Because somewhere between useful and pathetic, something inside me broke. Not in the way that shatters, but in the way that hardens. The motel room smelled like bleach and forgotten time. I checked in under a fake smile, told the night clerk I was just passing through, and took the key to room 217 without meeting his eyes. Inside, everything was beige. The walls, the bedding, even the framed painting above the bed, a sad winter cabin in the woods, felt too familiar to be comforting. I didn't take off my coat. I didn't unpack. I just sat at the edge of the bed, still holding my phone, still staring at the dark screen. I wanted to scream, or cry, or throw the phone across the room, but I didn't do any of that. Instead, I opened my banking app. The interface was muscle memory by now. I knew every tab, every transfer, every auto payment. My finger hovered over the scheduled transfers. $800 to Linda Grant, monthly on the 1st. $500 to Dylan Grant, same cycle. I canceled both. Just like that, the artery stopped bleeding. Next, I opened my credit card portal. For years, Mom had an authorized user card for emergencies. I had set it up after she claimed her insurance didn't cover prescriptions. The transaction history told a different story: boutique spas, luxury salons, restaurants in downtown Fort Worth. Nothing under $100. I reported the card as compromised. Then came Dylan's card, originally set up for gas and job applications. The last charges? Ski gear, event tickets, electronics. I shut that one down too. Finally, I opened my document folder and started a new file. Financial record, Grant family. Line by line, I documented every transfer, every emergency, every lie. December 12th, 2021, $1,000 for car repairs, later revealed in forwarded email. Down payment for Dylan's boat. June 2022, $800 mortgage, help corresponding Facebook post. Mom at a wine tasting resort in Sedona. October 2023, $500 dental surgery. Used for Tyler's girlfriend's birthday trip to New Orleans. Each line stung, but each line also clarified. By 3 a.m., I had compiled a timeline so meticulous it could have passed for forensic evidence. It wasn't about revenge. Not really. It was about finally seeing the truth without flinching. When I finished, I stared at the total. $83,459. In 5 years, $83,000. I could have bought a house, taken 2 sabbaticals, started my own agency. Instead, I'd funded lies and parties I wasn't invited to. A numbness settled in my chest, cold but strangely clean. I wasn't done. I opened my email and drafted a message to both of them. Subject line: termination of support effective immediately. Linda, Dylan, I've canceled all automatic transfers and removed your access to my credit and financial accounts. Total support over the last 5 years has exceeded $83,000. Documentation has been saved in full for legal purposes. Please do not contact me for further financial assistance. Natalie, no emotion, no explanation, just facts. I read it twice, 3 times. My hand trembled slightly, but my finger was steady as I clicked send. There was no going back now. Outside the window, the snow had stopped. The streetlight cast long shadows over the parking lot. Everything looked still, but inside me, something fundamental had shifted. A wire had snapped. A root had pulled loose. A name had been crossed off the ledger. They would feel the absence, not just of my money, but of me. I returned to Portland 3 days later. The snow in Texas had melted into slush, but in my chest, winter was just beginning. I stepped into my apartment, silent, still decorated for the Christmas I thought I'd be spending with family, and stood in the entryway for a long time. The twinkling tree lights blinked at me like a question I didn't know how to answer. My voicemail was full. 57 missed calls. Emails too? Some angry, some pleading, all variations of the same theme. Turn the money back on. I didn't reply to a single one. Lisa, my boss, noticed the shift even before I spoke a word. Something's different, she said after our January strategy meeting. Whatever happened over Christmas, it sharpened you. She wasn't wrong. It was Lisa who gently insisted I talk to someone. Therapy, she called it. You've carried too much alone for too long. I didn't argue. I was too tired to pretend anymore. That's how I met Dr. Miriam Chase. In our first session, I couldn't even form a sentence. I sat in the warm office with its bookshelves and soft lamp light and simply said, "My family didn't want me anymore." Dr. Chase didn't correct me, didn't push. She just nodded and let the silence fill the space between us. By the third session, I could say more. They used me for money, I said. They mocked me behind my back. Everything I thought made me a good daughter, they saw as weakness, something to exploit. Dr. Chase listened, and when she spoke, it was with surgical precision. What you're describing is financial abuse, she said gently, combined with emotional manipulation. Your grief is appropriate. You're not just angry. You're mourning. That word, grief, landed like a stone in my chest, because it was true. I wasn't just angry that my mother had lied or that my brother had laughed behind my back. I was grieving the idea of family, the version I had clung to all my life, the one I had funded, protected, worshipped, only to discover it had never really existed. Still, healing wasn't linear. There were days I couldn't get out of bed. Nights I replayed that door slamming in my face until I had to get up and pace the apartment like some ghost refusing to rest. But slowly pieces returned. Strength returned. And with it, clarity. One afternoon, while sorting mail in the lobby, I ran into Mrs. Bennet, my downstairs neighbor. A widow in her 70s with bright, silver hair and the sharpest eyes I'd ever seen. "You've stopped traveling so much," she observed, not unkindly. I nodded, staying local for a while. "Family trouble." I paused, then answered honestly, "Yeah, something like that." She didn't pity me, just nodded with quiet understanding. My son did the same. Took everything I had to start his business. Turned out it was a yacht. I blinked, then laughed. Mrs. Bennet smiled. Cut him off for 3 years. When he came back, he had to earn his place. Sometimes boundaries are the only love some people ever understand. That was how it started. She invited me up for tea one Sunday, then to her weekly canasta group, then to a shared grocery run. Slowly, what I'd always feared I'd never have again began to take shape. Connection that didn't demand a debit card. Affection that didn't require proof of usefulness. Chosen family. People who showed up because they wanted to. Who never asked for money. Who never said you should have called first when I knocked on their door. December came again, but this time the cold didn't find its way inside me. There was no tree in my apartment. No stack of wrapped presents. No carefully planned menu or expensive shipping receipts. Just a quiet warmth, the kind that isn't bought or begged for. Dr. Chase had asked me in our early December session, "What would a healing Christmas look like for you?" The answer came surprisingly fast. Not gifts, not family, not pretending. It would be something real. So I signed up to volunteer at Hope Haven, our community center that hosted Christmas dinners for elderly folks without family and single parents trying to make ends meet. It wasn't glamorous. Fluorescent lights, folding chairs, paper napkins, but the joy in that building was louder than any polished holiday party I'd ever seen. I arrived Christmas morning wearing a red scarf Mrs. Bennet had knitted for me and a small tin of lemon cookies. I was assigned to the gift station, wrapping and handing out presents donated to the seniors who had no one else. The list was long. The needs were simple. But what moved me wasn't what they lacked. It was how deeply they appreciated what little we could give. A jazz record for Mr. Washington, who used to play saxophone in clubs across Chicago. A purple scarf for Mrs. Diaz, who used to teach art before arthritis, stole her hands. A paperback of Agatha Christie for Miss Shirley, who once ran the town library. Each smile felt like redemption. At 10:42 a.m., while others were carving turkeys and opening stockings, I did one last thing. I opened my banking app, selected a nonprofit I had found weeks earlier, New Roots, an organization that helped women escape financial abuse and rebuild independent lives. I entered the donation amount slowly, deliberately, $2,300. It was the exact sum I would have spent on Mom and Dylan the year before. Gifts, money transfers, delivery fees, everything. I hit confirm. Just like that, the money was no longer a chain, it was a choice. A few hours later, while stacking leftover pies in the pantry, I met Mrs. Chin. 92, clear-eyed, sharp-tongued, and utterly unbothered by convention. "First time volunteering?" she asked, popping a peppermint into her mouth. "Yeah," I said, wiping my hands on a dish towel. "First Christmas since I lost my family." She tilted her head. Lost as in died, or lost as in discovered they weren't worth keeping. "The second one," I admitted, surprising myself with the honesty. She nodded. "Been there. Married a man for 47 years who had a second family in Detroit. Found out at his funeral." My eyes widened. She patted my arm. "You'll survive, honey. Might even like the person you become after." That night, As I walked back to my car in the crisp, dark air, I didn't feel empty. I didn't feel bitter. I didn't even feel sad. I felt clean. For the first time in years, I had kept something for myself. And I had given something that meant more than the cashmere or the console or the pie. I had given dignity to strangers who had never once asked for proof that I mattered. They just made room at the table. And I sat down. It was a Tuesday in April when I saw him. I'd just left a client lunch downtown, the kind where everyone wears too much cologne and laughs a little too loudly. The air was sharp with early spring, that mix of sunshine and leftover frost that makes you feel like anything could happen. I was walking past a boutique window when I caught sight of him before he saw me. Dylan. He looked older, not in years, but in the way people age when they've been scrambling too long with nothing to show for it. The jacket was expensive, but worn like it didn't belong to him. His hair was messier than I remembered. His expression, when he turned and saw me, shifted through 3 emotions in rapid succession: shock, calculation, and then forced warmth. "Natalie," he said, spreading his arms slightly like I might walk into them. "Wow, what are the odds?" I didn't move, just nodded. "Dylan, I didn't know you were in Portland." "Just for a conference," he said, eyes flicking to my bag, my heels, my coat, sharp, tailored, self-possessed. "You look good, really good." "Thank you," I said simply. "I am good." He faltered, just enough for me to notice. We stood there in the mid-morning hum of the city. People passed around us, oblivious. He cleared his throat. "Listen, about what happened. I mean, it's been a while. Water under the bridge, right?" I tilted my head. "Is that what you think it was? Water under a bridge?" He chuckled a little nervously. "Mom asks about you sometimes." I didn't respond. The silence answered for me. He sighed. "We've had a rough time, honestly. The spa went under. Mom had to sell the house. Things haven't exactly been easy since you left." He said it like I'd gone on vacation, not like I'd been cast out. 5 years ago, I would have been crushed by those words. 2 years ago, I would have felt triumphant. Now, I felt nothing but distance. "Life has challenges for everyone," I said. "I'm sorry it's been hard." He stepped closer, hopeful. "Maybe we could catch up sometime? Grab dinner? Talk things through." I shook my head, gentle but firm. "No, Dylan, we don't need to talk things through." His smile faltered. "Still holding a grudge, then?" I actually laughed. Not bitterly, just tired of the misinterpretation. "No grudge," I said calmly. "No anger. No resentment. Just boundaries." That confused him more than if I'd screamed. "I wish you the best," I added, "but my life doesn't include you anymore." He looked at me, searching for something: guilt, apology, regret, maybe even an opening. He didn't find one. As I turned to leave, he called out, "Natalie, family is supposed to be forever." I stopped, just for a second. Then I turned back. "True family is," I said, voice low and steady. "What we had wasn't." He opened his mouth to reply, but I was already walking away. My heels clicked confidently against the sidewalk. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. That night, I had dinner with Mrs. Bennet and 3 neighbors from our Sunday dinners. 2 retired teachers, 1 jazz-loving widower who brought the wine. The meal was simple: roasted chicken, spring vegetables, a pie someone had picked up from a bakery on 14th. There were no elaborate centerpieces, no expensive glassware, no curated playlists, just conversation, real conversation, about books, about aging, about how potholes on the east side were getting worse. At one point, Mrs. Bennet leaned in, her voice warm but knowing. "You okay, sweetheart? You've gone quiet." I looked around the table, at people who had once been strangers and were now something closer to family. Not by blood, not by obligation, but by choice. "I was just thinking," I said honestly. "Sometimes losing what you thought was essential opens the door to finding what actually is." They didn't ask me to explain. They didn't need to. The weeks rolled into summer. I kept seeing Dr. Chase. I started journaling, not just the hurt, but the healing. I joined a weekend photography class, rediscovering the creative joy I'd abandoned years ago when every spare hour had gone to someone else's crisis. At work, Lisa promoted me to lead a major campaign. "You've got gravity now," she said, like someone who knows what she's worth. And I did. The money I used to send every month, I funneled into a savings account, then a travel fund, then a small donation portfolio to causes that actually mattered to me. None of it went to silence manipulation anymore. It went to build. When the holidays came around again, I didn't flinch. I didn't pretend Christmas didn't exist. I didn't brace for texts that never came. I simply lived. I hosted a dinner for the Sunday group. Everyone brought something. Nobody brought expectations. There was laughter, real laughter. A neighbor's dog snuck a roll off the table and no one yelled. We passed around photographs and old stories. No one asked why I wasn't with my real family. No one needed to. After dessert, Mrs. Bennet handed me a small wrapped box. Inside was a delicate silver ornament, a snowflake. "No, two alike," she said with a wink. I hung it on my window, not a tree. It caught the morning light and scattered it across the floor like tiny diamonds. On Christmas morning, I brewed coffee, put on a sweater I had bought just for myself, and sat by the window as the city slowly stirred awake. No sound of carols, no messages from people who only needed me when their balance dropped. Just peace. Later that day, I opened my laptop and wrote the final line of a letter I hadn't planned to send but needed to write. Family is not who you give everything to until you are empty. Family is who fills you, even when they have nothing to give but presence. I never hit send. Some things are written just to be released. I closed the document, saved it under a new folder labeled Life After. And that was it. No dramatic confrontation. No last-minute apology. No tearful reunion. Just a clean break and a new beginning.